I am Melvin Adams, your host for the State of Education. Thank you for joining us. So, today I'm in the studio with Marquell Moore, who just completed a successful campaign for school board in Wisconsin. I'm excited to learn more of his story. Marquell, it's really great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Mr. Adams. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, before we get into your school board race, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the inner city. I attended, urban public schools my entire life. Grew up in and out of foster care and group homes. So, I really didn't, have a connection to Christ, or I really didn't have a connection to understanding morals and values. I just was funneled through the system, and no one had answers for me at 14 and 15. And so I decided to, make a choice to, graduate from high school, unlike many of my family members, and do something positive and graduate from high school and attend college. And so I did that. And, not having Christ in my life, I was uh, an atheist. And so when I went to Liberty University, mind you, I did not know Liberty was a Christian school. I never even visited the campus. I just showed up on the first day.
Wow.
I got a real awakening.
Yeah.
So it was a life changing experience for me, and I got to learn about why was the education so bad in Milwaukee? Why was the education so bad in our public schools in the inner city? Why were many people like me in so much misery in the urban communities? Who were creating these policies? And what was their intentions of these policies? What political party, did not have our best interests at heart? So it was a lot of these questions I started to challenge myself on, and the professors at Liberty challenged me, and it opened me up to a eye opener where I realized that, oh my God, if I want to make a difference, I need to get into policy. I need to be able to, you know, leave this world a better place
Mhm.
with a more Christian moral foundation than what I had experienced before. And so I decided to join this fight like everyone else and get involved in public policy.
Well, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that about your background, but thanks for sharing that. So, how long ago did you complete your studies at Liberty?
So about a year ago, it was an amazing experience at Liberty. I got there and I went to uh, first. I wanted to go major in education at first, and I was like, well, I'll go into back in the classroom and be a teacher. And I could do that, but I decided to take this one class called Foundation of American Society and Policy, and that was with Dr. Mary Prentice, who is a good friend of yours.
Hmm.
And that class blew me away, and I said, "Oh my God, I found my major, political science and public policy." And I will never forget this. And you can ask Dr. Prentice this on the day one. She's the reason why I became a public policy major, because on the first day when I got there, I told Dr. Prentice, and I'm still ashamed to this day. I went down there as a big Democrat, and I had this radicalized ideology, and I said, you have white privilege, Dr. Prentice, and you this, and she guided me so much. And she just said, you've been misinformed, and I thank God for every day for helping me come into Christ and bringing me into a new world that I never knew of, and educating me and guiding me. And I think that's what I needed. And she challenged me so much to where my mind was starting to open and question everything that I've been taught was a lie. And
Wow.
so I decided to clear my major in the department that she teaches in.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. Well, let me just say this: congratulations on being elected to the school board there. Uh, Tell us. So, where are you, for our listeners? Where are you, and what district will you be serving?
So I'm back in my home state of Wisconsin. Um, I decided to, leave Virginia after Liberty to go back home and make a difference in my own state. Virginia has a lot of firecrackers, and we saw that in November in the election. And so I said, I love Virginia. Virginia is definitely for lovers, but I decided to go back home to my home state, where I live in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and I am the newly elected school board member for the school district of Waukesha, which
Wow.
is about 20 minutes from Milwaukee.
Okay. Well, congratulations to you. So, you told us a little bit about your background, about your educational experience. And so, what really prompted you to decide to run for school board?
What prompted me was the fact that things have not gotten better. They actually got worse. So when I left Liberty University, and I started to, well, first let me backtrack here. Prior to going to Liberty, I was actually one of the most students that were behind. So academically, it wasn't Liberty University's fault. It was a failing school system that I came from, and we're just going to call a spade a spade.
Hmm.
These urban schools have failed, black children and brown children for decades, and poor white children. And so when I got to Liberty, academically, I was behind. It took professors like Dr. Prentice to really, really, she had to really work with me more one on one to get caught up academically.
Hmm.
I didn't even know how to write in Turabian. That's how bad the school system has, failed me
Yeah.
and stuff. So I realized that when I got to Liberty, when I went through my education at Liberty, that, you know, hopefully things have gotten better. Unfortunately, it did not. So when I returned home to Wisconsin, we saw after COVID that academics have plummeted. These children were locked out of school by special interest groups and political elitists who had other priorities other than educating our kids. And then they had the audacity to let the kids come back to school, but instead of focusing on academic recovery, we're going to focus on critical race theory. We're going to focus on indoctrination, ideology, sexual education that's very explicit and inappropriate for young children. I was very puzzled by that. Wisconsin, we have only 8% of our black students are proficient on grade level. That
Mm.
means that 92% of black students in Wisconsin are behind grade level.
Wow.
And I was one of those students. And so scores have definitely plummeted. But instead of focusing on how to have high standards for all of our children, I noticed when I got back here that, especially in the school district of Waukesha and all of the surrounding school districts, that the focus was all these other ideologies that had no great impact or positive impact on our students, but unfortunately was going to have farther worse impacts. So I decided to jump in and join this fight.
Well, so I assume that those issues that you found became part of your campaign message. What was your campaign message, and how did you come to the conclusion this is what I need to campaign on?
So my campaign focused on three pillars. Part of it was CRT and other ideologies, but really it was academic recovery.
Yes.
So the three pillars were elementary reading readiness. After research with Dr. Prentice and Dr. Fadam, my professors at Liberty, I knew that if students were reading by grade level 2, then research shows that they're going to have a successful foundation education for years to come. But that's if they are reading by grade level 2. If they're not reading by grade level 2, then the indicators show that they're going to be further and further behind, which I was one of those students. And if we look at our data now across the country, we've seen that academic proficiency has declined across our country. I mean, you can look at different districts in Wisconsin, Minnesota, even in Virginia, and some forth. Hopefully, the new governor. I have hope for Virginia. Things are going to turn around there, so I'm very happy with that. And so, but all across our country, we've seen that. And so, the pillar that I focused on was elementary reading readiness. About 60% of our students were not proficient in the school district of Waukesha. That's a huge problem, especially at the elementary level. The second pillar I wanted to focus on was college and career readiness. I
Mhm.
knew that if we really prepare our students for careers or college, then we will set them up for a stronger foundation. But unfortunately, we have not done that so far. I had the opportunity to meet with many admissions counselors around Wisconsin and around the Waukesha area. I went to 2-year colleges and 4-year universities, and the 2 years were mostly focused on the trades and vocation. And I asked those representatives, I said, what are some concerns that you have with the new generation coming into your institution? And they said, well, a lot of these people, a lot of these students are not prepared. We have students that can't even measure a ruler from your district, or we have students that, can't do basic mathematics. And how can we prepare them for a trade when we got to teach them now remedial math, something that they should have learned in K 12 schooling? And then I went to the
Yep.
four-year university, and they said the same thing. One English professor, Dr. Duke Pesta, who teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, said it explicitly that he's an English professor. He said I have to stop and teach my class remedial English, and that they should learn in high school. I have to teach them the differences between the subject and a verb and an adjective, and it was mind blowing that wow, we really have failed our students. So that was the second pillar. And the third pillar I want to focus on was a winning culture for all students and having high expectations for all students. There's
Mhm.
been a significant amount of soft bigotry in our school district as well as around the country. And it's mostly, and I'm going to be very blunt with you, it's mostly done by white people who have liberal ideologies who
Mhm.
think that they're doing good by lowering expectations for black and brown children. Right, their circumstances are too hard, so let's lower standards for them, and they can't do this
Yep.
math, so we should get rid of math because it's racist, and we should get rid of economics, which is what we're facing in our school district right now because it's quote unquote too hard for these kids.
Yeah.
No, I think
Yep.
that is racist, and I think that we should have high expectations for all of our kids, whether they're white, black, or
Absolutely.
pinstripe and stuff. So by us raising the bar, we're saying that we care about every single one of you. you know, I had the privilege of teaching white children, black children, Hispanic children, whatever you name it, and I love every single one of those children the same, like they are my own, and they are all of
Yep.
God's children. And if I care about them, I would want to have high expectations for all of them. You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so I think that was the third pillar that I ran on.
Wow, that sounds like a great platform. And I think, those that are listening, I certainly resonate with this. I mean, look, we need we education should be all about creating opportunity for every child. Doesn't matter where they came from. You make sure that you do the things that help them so that they can succeed in life. And perhaps even more so those that don't have particular backgrounds or particular perspectives from an economic or some of these various types of things, helping them to gain those skills, to gain those basic understandings, will help them so that they can break out of the box that they're in and really have a future. So, thank you for taking that challenge and for putting forward that platform. So, as obviously it was responded to well by voters in your district, parents, and so forth. Tell us about that. What kind of feedback did you get to your campaign message? And then following that, were there any specific or unexpected, maybe any unexpected challenges that you faced while you were campaigning?
So those are two great questions. I want to answer your first question first about what was some of the people voters' feedback when I was campaigning.
Hmm.
And actually, the
Mhm.
first house I knocked on. So on the campaign trail, I had to door knock. I had to put on different events for people to come to. But I think I got a lot of feedback. I believe I got a lot of feedback when I was door knocking. Those are the moments
Yeah.
where I got to really talk to voters. And the first door I knocked on was a Liberty graduate too, so they were all for me, which is
Really.
it worked out that way. I thought it was great.
Wow.
And a lot of the voters said, oh my God, Waukesha. To give you a little background about Waukesha, it's predominantly um, voters who are white, suburban, middle class, affluent, but they didn't look at me and say, I'm going to vote for him because he's black. This black man. They said, "Oh my God, he believes in the same things I do in terms of, you know, values, hard work, self responsibility, educating our kids for the future, not indoctrinating them. I'm going to give this young man a chance and vote for him because he believes in the same things that I do, and he
Mhm.
wants to, move this country forward by uniting all of our kids." And so they were really excited. And a lot of the voters told me, because I am a black man who is conservative, they said, well, you are preaching a lot of things that we unfortunately feel afraid that we can't say because we'll be deemed as racist if we say it. And I think that's wrong. They have every right to share their beliefs, their conservative values, their beliefs that All children should be treated equally under the civil rights laws, regardless if they're white, black, or pinstripe. All children deserve high expectations. We should unite all our children as Americans, not on skin color and stuff. So
Right.
they were, really on board with me in terms of, voting. And we saw that in the primary, where I came in top 3 in the primary and also top 3 in the general election. So voters were, and they were unhappy too in terms of the incumbents who sat there for years, who were, putting their kids and parents behind and voting in regards to respect to their special interest groups, such as the teacher unions and other special interests. So a lot of parents, woke up. This was definitely the year. This is definitely the year of the parents, and you can see that all across our country. So it was this hopeful movement when
Yeah.
I was door knocking. And then the pushback, you said, the challenge that I got was very brutal from people who are on the opposite sides of the political spectrum. So I was the only candidate of color in this race, and
Okay.
which doesn't matter to me. I but I was but I'm conservative, so that was a big. I was seen as a big threat to white, Democrats, or the Democratic Party, which I have no issue with them, but they definitely had an issue with me in terms of, you know, um, I received nasty, emails, uh, threats. It got so brutal and personal. I was told to go back to Milwaukee, where I came from, from the party
Wow.
that preaches tolerance and diversity a lot. And I was told I was called Uncle Tom and a conservative, coon. All those different things that it got really brutal very fast. And but I look at it, and also they did a lot of hit pieces on me. A lot of articles and journals. I don't know if you read about the me, talking about Black Lives Matter, and it was a Marxist organization, which it is. So they were very upset about that. So a lot of those things, they definitely targeted me a lot. I took a lot of blows in the campaign, but I think the voters saw through that, and the voters really, were not persuaded in their leaning. They saw through that, and they still came out and voted for me because they knew the truth, and they knew that I'm a good person. I have character, integrity, and I think they saw through that, and they wanted to send a clear message that, this is the guy that we want representing us for our school board.
All right. So I'm going to give you a loaded question here. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you had your campaign and you ran on certain things, but now that you're elected, what specific goals do you have or changes that you want to see in order to better serve your students, your families, and your community?
So that's a great question, and now that I am elected, there's some things I want to focus on. The first one is academic recovery. I believe that we need to focus on academic recovery. We've seen the hits that COVID has taken in our schools. Our children were, across this country, even in Waukesha, were either hybrid or locked out of school, had to quarantine the whole class for 14 days, and all this learning loss that has taken place over
Yep.
the last 2 years. Nobody's focused on the academic recovery. We're just now focusing
Yep.
on, we need to talk about race and critical race. No, our priorities need to go back to academic recovery, and it needs to
Yep.
be in terms of really prioritizing that and seeing where the gaps are, and making those assessments and those priorities to fill those gaps. So, you know rolling out, summer school, rolling out additional enrichment and literacy coaches, more intervention for our kids. Even the high achieving kids had some learning loss. So all of those implementations need to be addressed, and we have to focus on academic recovery before we do anything else. We are a board of education. Our job is to educate all of our children. And if we don't do
Yes.
that, then we're not doing our job. So academic recovery definitely is a main priority. The first day I'm sworn in, I told my fellow colleagues, I said, I'm doing school walkthroughs. I'm looking at, what do schools need, what do our children need in the classroom, what are they missing, and what do we need, to support them to fill those gaps and make sure that our students are back on grade level and we, are changing course into a high succeeding district. Another thing I want to, another um, category I want to focus on day one is uniting our children. I think that we are really living in a time where, Martin Luther King Jr. has to roll in his grave because,
Mm.
he, had a vision that we would unite all of our children and people under one race, which is the human race, and be able to live in this America that we all want. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer in this country. I believe this country gave me every opportunity to pull myself up out of my circumstances. And for that, I feel so indebted to America, where I love this country. I would give a shot off my back for this entire country, if that makes sense. So I think that my main focus is uniting our kids, because right now our kids are being told because of their race that they're oppressed, and because of races of other people that they're the oppressor. So we're pinning kids, we're making white kids feel bad. We're telling them that because they're white, they have this privilege that they need to apologize for. That right out the gate of birth, that they are the oppressors. We're telling black children because their skin color that they can't succeed in America. Hello, Waukesha just elected a black school board member and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's all of these things that we're dividing our kids on. I want to be able to bridge our kids together, unite them, and say, "Hey, you all are American children, and you represent America's future.
Right.
So we should unite our children
Right.
on nationality and not skin color." And there's some things that resources that
Yep.
I'm looking at to figure out how to do that with more activities in terms of uniting our kids, being proud of our American heritage, uniting them through activities such as making sure we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, making sure that we all learn about different leaders in America from different backgrounds who all contributed greatness to the society. So those are some of the
Yep.
things I'm focused on.
Wow, that really sounds great. It's encouraging to hear what you're saying. I believe firmly that all education in this country is driven by really two things. It's driven by leadership, in other words, whose ideas, and it's driven by legislation, whose decisions. And the school board is really the cross section of that. And so, thank you for taking this challenge. Thank you for stepping up and running. Thank you for talking to us today. And as we kind of wrap it up, what do you have to say to people listening today who are concerned about their students, their schools, and perhaps the country as a whole? What do you want to say to them?
I would say that we are living in a time where it can feel contentious. It can feel you know stress. And I would say America's best days are ahead. And so we saw in the victory in certain states like Virginia what could happen when we all stand up. And we saw it in our election in this past spring, sorry, this past week in our spring elections in Waukesha, when we all stand up, what could happen. So I think we all have to have hope. We need to stay engaged. We need to stay involved. And I think education is now taking center stage on American issues in
Yep.
politics. So,
Yep.
let's continue the momentum by staying engaged. All of you, attend a local school board meeting in your area if you can. Ask questions.
Mhm.
Put pressure on the people who make decisions for you, including myself. People respond to
Yep.
people respond to pressure, and I think that the reason why we find ourselves in this disarray in our country now because we were not pressuring our elected officials so much. We voted for them or they got in office some either way. We wasn't that involved in local politics because everyone was focused on politics on the federal level. Who was running for national offices, and so that created a situation where people snuck in at the local level and made decisions that impact our everyday lives. And now we're aware of that, and so we need to be not only involved at the national level. We need to go back to our founding fathers and what they believed, and that it starts at the local level. It is not a top down government that they wanted to create. They wanted to create a bottom up
Yep.
government. And so we need to really start at the bottom. We need to start at the local levels, being involved in our school boards, going to our city council meetings, making sure that people who sit on the city councils making best decisions in terms of where our tax monies are, our tax dollars are going, making sure that we're going to school board, like I said, school board meetings. Also, being involved in the mayor, asking them questions, emailing them. Again, when we start to stand up, then we will see a shift in course in a better direction, which we already have seen. So I think a lot of people are speaking up. A lot of people are concerned for their country, and that's a good thing in terms of, including myself, in terms of now that we have been concerned about our country, we I think that God put us in 2020. 2020, He put us through a lot to realize that He blessed His country so much where we turned away from Him, and now we're seeing that we made a mistake, and so
Yeah.
we're slowly coming back to Him, but surely, if that makes sense.
Marquell, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you all the best. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The State of Education. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe. Now, if you're interested in running for school board, for a limited time, we are offering tuition-free training on our website. Now, we look forward to sharing more quality content with you in the very near future, thanks to the generous support of our donors. Learn more on our website at nwef.org. That's nwef.org.